1, 2, 3. Okay, everyone, we're coming back together for the rest of the program now, and I'd like to introduce Edwina Cowell from Spiritual Playdate. Here you go.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am going to encourage you all to move up a little bit. Would anybody be willing to come up a little bit? Okay, all right. Come on in, guys. We're getting started again. So my name's Edwina Cowell, and I am the founder and director of Spiritual Playdate. And we are a program that uses an interfaith perspective to deliver web-based life skills to kids. And they're grown-ups, is what we like to say. We feel that we need to serve the next generation in order to change the situation that we have managed to get ourselves into. So I think a lot of you have probably seen this slide, that it is easier to build strong children than repair broken adults. And I think that many of us feel like we're in a situation now where we are trying to figure out how to repair broken adults. And how did we break all these adults is our other problem. Now, that being said, I think you'll see that many of us are parents, clergy, or involved with teachers or mentors, and somehow work with kids or the next generation. Do we have parents here? As a show of hands, any parents? How about teachers? Anybody a teacher here? Any clergy here? So there's been a letter that's being passed around, and that letter was written after the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting and the New Zealand mosque shooting. And it was an open letter to address the situation that we have created in our human family right now with the violent extremism and the faith-based hate. And we feel very strongly that we cannot really address this without creating a more spiritually grounded youth. And so that is really our mission, is to deliver social, emotional, and spiritual skills to our youth. One second. You know, I think we can all agree that we've been watching the world devolve into chaos, and we can probably also agree that it's crazy that in 2020, this is where we find ourselves. I don't know if anybody really expected to look at our situation and think, of course, this is what the world would look like in 2020. Everywhere we turn, we're starting to see human behavior driven by, Everywhere we turn, we're starting to see human behavior that's driven by fear and rage and despair. We're horrified by the escalating violence and the extremism and the hate crimes, but many of us feel helpless as to how we can solve this problem, and we mostly talk about things like gun laws and security, but those are really only stopgap measures. They're not really getting at the source of the problem. If we really want to create real change and turn things around, we need to start to turn to our youth. This is a quote by the Dalai Lama, and while I agree with this, I really didn't mean it to just be about meditation. Meditation's great, obviously, but not always easy. But what we really need to do is we really need to look at all of the social, emotional, and spiritual skills that we can start delivering to our kids that will help them be more grounded, have less anxiety, feel safer, feel more connected with each other, and feel like they have a purpose on this planet. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with social emotional skills and learning, but if there's a big movement right now in the world to be more inclusive of social emotional skills. And you'll find that you'll start to hear this everywhere because they're trying to push this on the schools. Well, of course, the schools are barely equipped with the resources to keep up with what they're doing right now, let alone fold this in. And while many want to, they're finding it very challenging. They don't have the time, they don't have the resources. And this is not something that can just be taught in the school. It is really something that's going to take a village. These kinds of skills should be taught at home. They should be taught in our houses of worship. They should be taught in our libraries. They should be taught to children, and they should be taught to adults. Because they're trying to push them into the schools, specifically the public schools, they've scrubbed any sort of religious or spiritual subjects out of the content. So you'll find, things like listening, cooperation, those sorts of things. But you'll hear very little conversation about anything faith-based. And of course, very little conversation about what the concept of world religion is. Well, one of the problems is many of us have been steeped in a single ideology, and this is the way the world was. This is how we grew up. We learned one thing, we were told it was the truth, and we didn't understand that many, many people in the world have different ideas about creators or gods, or that there is no God. There's so many different views and paths to the idea of existence and cosmology, but we were never exposed to that. So that is part of the problem that got us here, because now we are in a situation where we find that these other people have some exotic ideas about life and existence and God. Uh-oh. Are we back? Sorry. So we also maintain that it's important for us to add the idea of spiritual skills. It's important for us to talk about what world religion is. What is God? What are spiritual teachers? What are these ideas? And they can be talked about contextually and develop critical thinking skills in kids. It doesn't have to be delivered theology. I don't know if Shanta talked about delivered theology today, but I know he uses that term quite a bit. Delivered theology is when you sit down with your kids and you tell them this is what you believe. It's a belief. It's not fact. It's not fiction. And while many people will tell you it's truth, and you may grow to believe that it's truth in your heart, these are still beliefs. This is what this is all about. And as long as we tell the kids that it's truth, and they don't discover that truth for themselves, when they get to the point that they see that there are all these other truths in the world, there becomes conflict and tension. So it is important for us to start including these ideas, teaching about world religion, teaching about spiritual teachers, holy books, texts in a contextual way so that they become critical thinkers. And this is a very big part of our mission, is to get kids and adults, parents, teachers, mentors, again, librarians, therapists, talking about these big concepts. One more thing. I know I don't have too much time today, but one more thing that I really want to touch on is one of the huge problems that we're having with our youth in general right now, and actually with all of us, is anxiety. I think you can hear it everywhere. Any of you that know about kids and grandkids in the schools, it's one of the number one problems. Kids are suffering from depression and anxiety. And again, this is another subject that nobody's ever talked about with the kids. They don't understand what it is. They don't understand what a real threat is versus an imagined threat. So there are ways to approach these subjects and talk to the kids so that they can all understand that this is a universal problem. Anxiety isn't something that is, some diagnosis for just them that needs a medication. We need to create a more grounded, more spiritual, more loving, more compassionate generation. That is what is going to turn this around. That's why I say the interfaith heroes are the parents and the teachers that start working with the kids. This is where the passion is for us. Oop. So I ask you all to consider I know that all of you are here because you're passionate about interfaith. I know that you do interfaith work, you have interfaith councils, and you do probably service work for your community. I ask you all to consider, how are you serving the kids, the youth, the families? What are you doing to serve the kids in your community and in your faith communities? If you don't have any sort of a children's program, please consider finding a way to create something with parents so that we can start to build a stronger, more grounded generation. Thank you.